Mark Rogers TV talking SEC quarterbacking as we prepare for spring practice. We've looked at the West. Let's look at the East, where we've got actually quite a bit of quarterback stability. But we want to look at a couple programs to start us out that are losing starting quarterbacks. So we bring in Stephen Garcia, former South Carolina quarterback, to break down. First of all, Stephen, let's talk some Georgia football. Hutson Mason didn't have the prolific career that Aaron Murray, his predecessor, did, but man, he took care of the football, had a really nice season last year, 20 TDs, 4 picks, got hurt in the bowl game, and we got a little bit of a look at Bryce Ramsey, although most of it was just handing off to Nick Chubb, but he threw 9 passes in the bowl game. So do you have any take on Bryce Ramsey at this point?
Yeah, from everything that I've heard, and there's been a lot about Bryce Ramsey. I mean, they said that this guy's got, one of the bigger arms. They compared him a lot to Matt Stafford in terms of arm strength. And that's Matt Stafford and Ryan Mallett. Between those two guys, I mean, those guys have the strongest arms I've ever seen at any level. So, I mean, to compare this kid's arm to Matt Stafford is pretty legit. So, I think that's definitely going to be a little bit different than Hutson Mason. Hutson Mason was a smart player, fifth-year senior. I think he was accurate. Didn't have the strongest arm in the world, but I think that limited the playbook a little bit. But I think they'll be able to open up a little bit, and obviously they're getting a new offensive coordinator, but it should be interesting with Bryce Ramsey back there. They have a pretty good running back to hand the ball off if all else fails.
Definitely. Yeah, that should be interesting. I didn't realize that his arm was touted with the likes of Stafford and Mallett. That's pretty good stuff. Let's turn to a program that I hope you know something about here. Of course, Connor Shaw finished off his career with one of the better seasons we've seen in terms of touchdown and interception ratio at 24-1. He hands it over to Dylan Thompson, who had gained a lot of valuable experience in bowl games and against Clemson before he took over as the starter last year. Dylan loved to sling it around a little bit. Can you size up a little bit for us the South Carolina quarterback competition for 2015?
It's going to be interesting. This entire past season, Coach Mangus and Coach Spurrier, they never really announced who the backup quarterback to Dylan was. Really they talked about Pharaoh Cooper going and playing Wildcat. So that doesn't really give me a whole lot of confidence, in their confidence level in these backup quarterbacks. But I think it's going to be between Perry Orth, Connor Mitch, and then they got a freshman coming in, Lorenzo Nunez, who's a little bit more of a runner. So, it'll be a three-way battle for the starting role. And, I think that Coach Mangus and Coach Burrow will be able to, get these guys ready to play in come opening week.
Maty Mauk got a difficult situation in 2013 when James Franklin went down against Georgia. He stepped in. He won a lot of big ball games and was one of the big reasons why they won the East. 11 TDs, 2 picks. This past year, the defense and the special teams really stepped up. Mauk had a nice season. 51% a couple of years ago, 53%. I don't know how much stock you put into that, but we're in a day and an age when there's so much advantage given to the offense, finding guys in space, a lot of short passing game, a lot of bubble screens, a lot of stuff that heightens the completion percentage. That when you see 53%, does that concern you at all for Maty Mauk?
Yeah, a little bit. But I like Bo Wallace. I think he's a gunslinger. I think he believes in himself and believes in his talent level, and I think he's a very talented quarterback. I think he may have been a little bit overrated to start this season out. I thought he was going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the entire SEC last season, but it was kind of turnover prone, and they lost a few bad games. But overall, I think he's a pretty good quarterback, and things happen. I think I'll have a solid season next year.
Stephen, as a side note, I've got to just tell you how impressed I am with your analysis in the car, now out of the car, walking around, just able to take it on, maintain your focus, give us first-rate analysis while you're on the move. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, man, busy guy, man. Got to move around.
Good stuff. All right, the Tennessee situation is just all on the bright side. Everything's looking up. They got a kid in Josh Dobbs that started the last 6 games last year. He's a dual-threat guy to the hilt, finished up with a really efficient game against Iowa. Tennessee goes on with a blowout win over the Hawkeyes. Tennessee bringing in a ton of talent. He's got a good group of young wide receivers. So Joshua Dobbs, what are your impressions of him?
I think he's unbelievable. I mean, that first game, I guess he got in a little bit, during the Alabama game and played pretty well. That Tennessee's offensive line was so bad last season. I felt so bad for Justin Worley. I mean, I watched a few of their games, and he was just getting absolutely crushed. So I think, they with this guy's, mobility, I think that definitely helps the offensive line. They don't have to block for as long, and, he can kind of move around a little bit, talking about Dobbs. I think he's obviously a smart kid. He's a aerospace engineer major or something crazy like that. So he's a very bright kid, and, I'm impressed with him. I think Tennessee, they're definitely on the up and up as far as recruiting and, the way that their freshmen played this season. So if I'm in the SEC East, I'm definitely thinking Tennessee's probably the team to beat.
No doubt. Now, another program that's on the rise, maybe not to the extent of Tennessee, but compared to what Kentucky usually brings in football, Mark Stoops has put together a couple top 20 recruiting classes. He's got a junior in Patrick Towles coming back, who had a nice little season, gave Mississippi State a bit of a scare in Lexington at one point, ran for 6 touchdowns, 3 for 14. So did you get much of a chance to see Patrick Towles, and what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I got to see him quite a few times, and, I think he's one of the most talented quarterbacks in the SEC, not just the East, the entire SEC. He's got a big arm, he's a tall kid, and, I was very surprised how mobile he was. I didn't, being that tall, he's a pretty slim guy, a little slender frame, but, I mean, the way that he was running, I believe it was against Mississippi State, I think he had like 166 yards or something crazy like that. I was completely taken back by that. So, they got a good player in, in their quarterback situation. So I expect him to have a pretty good season next year as well, after getting this first season under his belt.
Things obviously didn't work out for Jeff Driscoll at Florida, partially due to coaches and coordinators switching every year, not having the dynamic playmakers that Florida's had under Urban Meyer, and he didn't play well at times. I thought he played pretty efficiently considering what he had around him a couple years ago when Florida won 11 games. But he's off to Louisiana Tech, and you got Treon Harris, who is a bit scattershot as a freshman, but again, he's a freshman, so we'll cut him a break there, definitely. He took care of the football pretty well, 9 touchdowns, 4 picks. And this kid, Will Greer, who is a top flight recruit in 2014's class, gives him some competition. So what are you expecting to see out of that?
That was the Gators quarterback situation was pretty tough. I'm actually friends with Jeff Driscoll and was talking to him last week, towards the end of last week, and just wishing him well. And it was just a bad situation for him. I really felt bad for him. But talking about Florida now, and Treon Harris, I don't think he's the answer at quarterback for them. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of offensive system Coach McElwain brings in from Colorado State. But I've seen a few of the games, and I think if Jeff Driscoll would have been playing against Florida State, I think Florida ends up winning that game. I think Treon he's a great athlete. I just don't think he's a very good quarterback, to be honest with you. But they definitely got to figure something out with the quarterback situation. They have not been the same since Tebow graduated.
Definitely. Yeah, you bring up a good point about Driscoll, and we've talked about it many times on here. That year in 2012, when they won 11 games, almost went to the national championship game. It seems so far removed from that right now, but they were very close to that. And he pretty much, the stats weren't glowing, but he took care of the football and he moved the chains and gained a lot of third down conversions with his legs. And it was basically Mike Gillis stayed between the tackles and rely on the defense besides that, and there was really nothing on the outside to help him out in that situation. So, all right, last but not least, I know we don't know a whole lot about Vanderbilt, but it looks to be a two-man race here with Phillip Rivers' brother Stephen moving on. He came in from LSU, but couldn't pry the job away from either Johnny McCrary or Pat Robinette. Now, Robinette's the guy that took over for Curtis Samuels down the stretch when it was actually a pretty decent football team in 9-4 the season before, and he's a runner. He played pretty well, but neither of these guys did much of anything, and not to discredit them because there wasn't a whole lot around them. Vanderbilt suddenly going from being a respectable contender in the East to just it looks like a mess based on what we saw in 2014.
Oh man, yeah, it was a bad year for the Vanderbilt Commodores. I mean, they had so many good years, after with Franklin there, and winning bowl games and winning 9 games, and then to going from this year. And, I think Derek Mason's a hell of a coach. I do not believe in the whole quarterback musical chairs thing. Coach Spurrier did that with me, with, Chris Smelly, Tommy Beecher, and, Connor Shaw at the end of my career. But, I mean, it really sucks as a quarterback. And, when you do that as a coach and you have these 4 or 5 quarterbacks that I think ended up being like 5 quarterbacks that played for Vanderbilt, it doesn't give any of them confidence. But like you said, I think they got to get some guys around them. It's really tough to recruit guys to Vanderbilt right now, especially the way that Tennessee's recruiting everybody. And you see Kentucky, they're on the rise. So it's a tough deal for them. But I'm a Vanderbilt fan, believe it or not. I like Nashville. I like everything about Vanderbilt. I hope that they can get a quarterback and have a steady guy.
Stephen, I think to bring up an interesting subject for another time, I would love to get the dynamic in that quarterback situation when you have a quarterback controversy, a battle, and what those guys are saying internally, what the competition's like, if they're supporting each other, not supporting each other, what the coaches are saying, if they're giving you any information or just flying by the seat of their pants and you have no idea who the next guy is going to be. Would love to have a talk about that someday. All right, we got Stephen Garcia, former South Carolina quarterback, finished up his career with the Gamecocks there in 2011. Hey, Stephen, we appreciate you in the middle of your day finding some time for us to break this thing down.